Ukrainian defense forces have launched an attack on the Russians near the village of Makiivka, Kherson Oblast, with the Russians losing about 500 soldiers killed and wounded. Source: General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook, information as of 6 o'clock on January 3rd. Quote, "It was confirmed that units from the Defense Forces of Ukraine fired at the enemy's manpower and military equipment near the village of Makiivka in Kherson Oblast on December 31st. The enemy's losses amounted to 500 servicemen killed and wounded." Details: the General Staff also reported that units of the Defense Forces fired at clusters of Russian personnel near the settlement of Fedorivka, Kherson Oblast, on January 1st. Casualties among the Russian military are being confirmed. Background: the Armed Forces of Ukraine killed 400 occupiers on New Year's Eve. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation has confirmed the killing of the occupiers in Makiivka, but says the number of losses is much lower. The Russian Federation lost about 750 servicemen, and Ukrainian defenders destroyed a Russian helicopter and air defense system, along with 5 tanks, 6 artillery systems, a multiple launch rocket system and 7 armored combat vehicles over the course of January 2nd. Over 60 Russian troops were killed on New Year's Eve by Ukrainian missile strikes, Russia's defense ministry said during a briefing on Monday, adding the bombardment hit temporary barracks at a former vocational college in Makiivka, the twin city of the Russian-controlled regional capital of Donetsk. Ukraine said the Russian death toll was in the hundreds, though pro-Russian officials called this an exaggeration. Moscow disclosed that 4 rockets fired from US-made HIMARS launchers hit the site, and 2 rockets had been shot down. The attack happened precisely at 0:01 a.m. on New Year's night while the servicemen were celebrating. Defense Ministry spokesman Lieutenant General Igor Konashenkov said that all necessary assistance and support will be provided to the families of the fallen troops. Russia's foreign ministry earlier condemned Washington for not only supplying sophisticated weapons to Kiev but also providing the Ukrainian military with intelligence about the location of the Russian forces. Grigory Karasin, a member of the Russian Senate and former deputy foreign minister, not only demanded vengeance against Ukraine and its NATO supporters but also an exacting internal analysis. Sergei Mironov, a legislator and former chairman of the Russian Senate, demanded criminal liability for the officials who had allowed the concentration of military personnel in an unprotected building and all the higher authorities who did not provide the proper level of security. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky did not address the strike in his nightly speech on Monday. Russian nationalists and some lawmakers have demanded punishment for commanders they accused of ignoring dangers as anger grew over the deaths of dozens of Russian soldiers in one of the Ukraine war's deadliest strikes. In a rare disclosure, Russia's defense ministry said 63 soldiers were killed on New Year's Eve in a fiery blast that destroyed a temporary barracks in a vocational college in Makiivka, twin city of the Russian-occupied regional capital of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. Kiev claimed the death toll was much higher, with around 400 Russian soldiers killed and 300 more were injured in the incident. Russian critics said the soldiers were being housed alongside an ammunition dump at the site, which the Russian Defense Ministry said was hit by 4 rockets fired from US-made HIMARS launchers. Russian military bloggers said the extent of the destruction was a result of storing ammunition in the same building as a barracks, despite commanders knowing it was within range of Ukrainian rockets. Igor Girkin, a former commander of pro-Russian troops in eastern Ukraine who is now one of the highest-profile Russian nationalist military bloggers, said hundreds had been killed or wounded. Ammunition had been stored at the site and military equipment there was uncamouflaged, he said. "What happened in Makiivka is horrible," wrote Archangel Spetsnaz Z, a Russian military blogger with more than 700,000 followers on the Telegram messaging app. Who came up with the idea to place personnel in large numbers in one building, where even a fool understands that even if they hit with artillery, there will be many wounded or dead, he wrote. Commanders couldn't care less, he said. Ukraine almost never publicly claims responsibility for attacks on Russian-controlled territory in Ukraine, and President Volodymyr Zelensky did not address the Makiivka strike in his nightly speech on Monday. But the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces reported the Makiivka attack as a strike on Russian manpower and military equipment. It did not mention casualties, but said 10 pieces of military equipment were destroyed. The chief commander of the Iranian army has warned that the country's armed forces will give a decisive response to any potential threat posed by Israel. Major General Said Abdolrahim Mousavi made the remarks in the end of Zulfikar 1401 joint drills, which were held in southeastern coast of the country as well as the Oman Sea and the Indian Ocean. The drills send the message of peace and friendship to the regional and amicable nations, Mousavi said, cautioning the ill-wishers of the Islamic Republic that the armed forces are serious in protecting the holy establishment and the territorial integrity of the country, and that they will respond to any threat categorically. Referring to the issue that the Zionist regime is experiencing its worst situation since its fake initiation, the commander stated that the prime minister of the regime has been forced to form an alliance with the most radical politicians in a bid to arrange his cabinet. Sometimes certain Zionist officials express unfounded claims, so we tell them that the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran will severely and decisively react to any threat by the regime against any part of the Islamic country, he warned. The Iranian army has showcased a part of its defensive capabilities in recent days, he continued, adding that we showed the world that we can reply to any threat in the best way. The drills are planned for deterrence and security, the commander said, noting that aggressive states should find out that any aggression will end up in miscalculation by the aggressors. Swedish voters are backing their government in saying the Nordic country should refrain from compromising on its legal principles to win Turkey's ratification for its NATO application, according to a poll. Sweden should continue to abide by its laws in the face of Turkish demands, even if it means delaying its membership in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, according to 79% of people who responded to the poll commissioned by newspaper Dagens Nyheter and published late on Monday. In contrast, 10% said Sweden should seek to join as soon as possible regardless of whether that entails concessions on its legal principles. Turkey's president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has objected to Sweden and Finland joining NATO since they put in bids in May, arguing that the Nordic countries need to do more to combat terrorism, including extraditing people who Turkey accuses of terrorist links. A few weeks ago, Sweden's Supreme Court ruled against the extradition of a man Turkey has said was involved in a 2016 coup attempt against the president. Both Nordic governments have insisted they will step up counter-terrorism efforts, while underscoring the independence of courts in deciding on extraditions. 28 of 30 NATO countries have ratified their entry into the bloc, with Hungary also stalling. The poll also showed a 60% approval for Sweden's NATO application, an all-time high. The survey of 1,248 respondents was carried out by Ipsos via online surveys, and no margin of error was available.